Chapter 16 of Her Love from Above, Johnny's Story. Lieutenant Chazakwe scanned the area as he lowered himself toward the Haven's Rest property line. After clearing up a few details with the FBI agents concerning Almond's case, he was finally able to personally assist the ministry. With certainty, regardless of what happened over the next few hours, Almond's reign of terror was ending. The lieutenant's red-haired, blemish-faced teen disguise had once again fulfilled its purpose, and now there were several people who could identify Almond as the victim of the mob. Even if these individuals refused to testify, which was possible, his face, blood and bruises included, could be seen on the video camera, proving he was in the area at the time of Alma's call. It was time to prepare Haven's Rest for a future without Bobby Joe. As Lieutenant Chazakwe flew above the cabins, he noticed two men hiking toward the edge of the property line. That, by itself, would not have seemed strange, but when you consider the demonic presence surrounding those men, it became a much more serious issue. He drew his sword from the ether and altered his course. Nahath was awaiting their approach, so all eyes were fixed on him, leaving his advance from behind a complete surprise. If the demonic beings wanted to defy Nahath's directives, an attack from two directions would divide their forces, ensuring their quick and easy defeat. He knew that Nahath could handle them alone, but why force the issue when it wasn't necessary? As the lieutenant neared the rear of the demonic party, he overheard Nahath introducing himself. His sword was drawn, and he was ready to unleash his warring abilities to protect the ministry and its residents. "I am Nahath of the army of the Lord," he heard his companion introduce. "I am the guardian of the Haven's Rest ministry, and you are entering the territory of the Lord God Almighty. What is your purpose for being here?" Upon hearing Nahath's words, one of the demonic beings moved forward. "My name is Ghost," the smoky being uttered. "I have rightfully come with my host." He pointed toward Alma as he and Joffrey made their way through the woods. "We were here earlier today without being detained. Why are you detaining us now?" Nahath examined the hideous creature more thoroughly. He was the largest of the demonic band, but his appearance wasn't nearly as grotesque as his companions. His claws were black with jagged ends, some coming to a point and others not, and his jerky movements caused them to glisten sporadically in the evening sun. His eyes, a bloodshot yellow with spider-like veins traveling through them, glared in utter defiance. His body seemed almost smoky, and his form had no defining lines. This smoky appearance gave a mystic feel to his presence, but Nahath knew that Ghost was as vulnerable to his weapons as any of his comrades. "I was aware of your presence earlier," Nahath acknowledged, "but earlier you were not here for harm. Now you are." "We are not here to harm any of your charges. We accompany our hosts, nothing more." Ghost remained frozen in place, awaiting Nahath's decision. He did not want a skirmish with this angelic warrior. Nahath surveyed Ghost's companions, who were all the same blackish-gray color, although much smaller in size. In contrast to him, they had visible scars scattered around their bodies, and a putrid-smelling green and red slime dripped from fresh wounds on their skin, announcing they had just come from a battle. When Nahath delayed his answer, Ghost continued, "We have the right to travel with our hosts. This is a privilege you cannot deny us." "I can while on the Haven's Rest property," Nahath responded. "There are rules here." "Your previous charge has passed," Ghost contended. "Bobby Joe is no longer. There are new rules now." "Her prayers continue," Lieutenant Chazakwa inserted. At the lieutenant's words, the demonic beings whirled around in alarm. Lieutenant Chazakwa's stance was one of assurance. I am Lieutenant Chazaquah. I have come to ensure that you do not step outside the bounds you are given. Nahath stepped closer to the demonic beings. You will be watched, he cautioned. Yes, Bobby Joe is gone, but her prayers continue. You will be permitted to go with your hosts, but you will not be allowed to interfere in the human realm. If you do, he glanced back at Lieutenant Chazaquah without finishing his sentence. If you do, the lieutenant added, as directed by the Almighty, I will end you. Nahath continued. Lieutenant Chazaquah will accompany you during your stay at Haven's Rest. He eased away from the beings. You may follow your host, but any interference will be at great cost. Alma and Joffrey neared the cabin belonging to Ava as the cover of darkness slowly descended. They hoped to get the job done quickly so they could leave the area without anyone being the wiser. You stay out here, Alma instructed. I'm going inside. After they're both in the cabin, come in behind me. Joffrey nodded in affirmation. He was twice Alma's age, but this wasn't his gig, so he would follow the younger man's instructions. When Alma began to move forward, the demonic beings tried to follow, but Lieutenant Chazaquah stepped in their way. No, he stated, you are not allowed inside the cabin, nor are you allowed to follow from here. He is our host, Ghost argued. We go with our host. Lieutenant Chazaquah raised his sword in defiance of Ghost's statement. If you follow, you die. Those are my orders. Ghost glowered at the angelic warrior, but moved no closer. He would wait until Alma returned from fulfilling his assignment. If he did not return, oh well, there were plenty of other misguided souls to pursue. Lieutenant Chazaquah remained stationary in a defensive position. Johnny sat outside the lodge on the same bench where he had relaxed 2 evenings before, unable to help recalling the events of that first night. Before then, his definition of a narcissist was merely a selfish person. He had no idea they were far more devious than that, nor did he understand they were basically all the same, doing and saying the same things. They weren't original in their tactics, and mostly followed specific patterns. Tonight, Tally continued that education, speaking about their sense of entitlement, self-importance, and unrealistic feelings of superiority. In other words, they were legends in their own minds. That described Madison perfectly. She acted like everyone on earth was placed here to meet her every desire. And if anyone ever defied her wishes, she became aggressive or violent toward that individual. He couldn't count the bruises or scratches she had personally given him throughout the years. When Tally explained how a narcissist catches their victim, it felt like she was telling his story. During the first months of their courtship, Madison had been the most charming lady he had ever known. He remembered thinking he was the luckiest man in the world to find such a priceless jewel. But then everything changed 3 months into their marriage, shortly after she quit her job. That's when his misery began. That's when she started using the silent treatment whenever he did or said anything she didn't like, a punishment Tally said was common among female narcissists. Now, 5 years into their marriage, he wished she would use the silent treatment. Anything would be better than her constant screaming, ranting, raging, hitting, pinching, and scratching. Johnny shook his head in bewilderment at some of his memories. About 6 months earlier, Madison had attempted to bite him during one of her rages. That was his limit. The first time her teeth touched his skin, he told her he was gone and that she could get a job to provide for her own expensive tastes. He had set a boundary, just like Tally discussed. He looked toward the sky as he groaned at his own ignorance. She broke that boundary only 2 weeks later. He was asleep on the couch when she supposedly tripped and fell onto him. Her opened mouth hit his leg, leaving a severe bruise in the shape of teeth. He took the high road and assumed she was being honest, even though he seriously doubted her story. Now, if he were required to bet on the truthfulness of her claim, he would bet against it. As Tally said, he set a boundary, so she had to break that boundary in a manner that wouldn't cost her her income. Johnny grimaced as he thought back over the past 5 years. Madison had exploited, demeaned, bullied, belittled, and abused him daily for one reason or another. She'd sought him out daily just to belittle him, yet he had stayed with her. Like the slow drip of a faucet, her abuse gradually trained him to obey because disobedience over the slightest thing would cause months of misery. He thought about that for a moment. In essence, she trained him by making disobedience not worth the suffering that followed. On rare occasions, when he could no longer suffer her abuse, he would salute her, then turn and leave the house. He chuckled, thinking about those salutes and the expressions on her face. That would infuriate her, but since he refused to hit a woman, it was the most revenge he ever got. "There you are," Ava said as she approached. Johnny stood and took the final bag of groceries from her hands. Ava laughed. "Yes," she agreed. "Jenny said they do a complete pantry fill for every cabin when a new resident arrives. From here on out, it'll only be small amounts that need to be replenished." Johnny placed the final bag on the seat between them and started the Jeep, then glanced at the lodge and the surrounding area. "This place is pretty neat," he commented. "Yes," she agreed. He shifted the Jeep into reverse and began backing up. "I've learned a lot these last few days." "Me too," she replied. He looked at her. "Your face and neck are looking a little better." She smiled and looked down. "I'm praying it never looks that way again. At least, that's my goal. Jenny introduced me to the big man who sits at the back table." "Jude?" Johnny said. "Yes," she acknowledged. "He's going to teach me karate." "Karate? Do you know what kind?" "Kudo, I think. I may be pronouncing it wrong." "You said it right," Johnny confirmed. "It'll be good for self-defense." "You know Kudo?" Johnny brushed his fingers through his hair out of habit. "I was quite good at it once, but it's been a while since I've fought in competitions. I've had to work too many hours these last few years to keep up with it." "I'll never marry again," Ava offered out of the blue. "Never. I won't have to use it on a husband, but I figure it's always good to be able to defend yourself when you go somewhere." "Yes," Johnny agreed. "It is." "What's your story?" Ava suddenly blurted out. She knew Johnny was Charlie's cousin's son-in-law, but not much more than that. Recent encounters had shown that Charlie and Paige weren't very close, yet she still wondered why Charlie had immediately taken such a firm stance against a relative without much proof. Of course, she had not been around them the entire time, so something could have happened that she had not seen. Johnny hesitated. "You don't have to tell me," she quickly added. "I didn't mean to intrude where I'm not wanted. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be so nosy." "It's okay," Johnny responded, glancing at her before looking back to the gravel path. "You've told me a lot of your story, and from what I've seen here, it helps to talk things out." He slowed the Jeep and pointed toward a deer. Her fawn, probably not more than 6 months old, was nuzzled against her side. "I love seeing that. They aren't in the slightest bit scared. They'd keep out of our sight anywhere else." He sped up the vehicle. "I've never talked to anyone about Madison," he said. "I've always felt like I would be betraying her if I did. Even her mom doesn't know the truth." "They do that to you," Ava informed. "They make you feel guilty or ashamed for talking to anyone about what's happening. In the end, I only talked with one friend, maybe once or twice a year. We didn't have a house phone, and I wasn't allowed to have a cell phone. Ed would leave his phone where I could get it every now and then, so I would sneak into a closet in our basement and call her. But I could only talk for a few minutes lest he discover my treachery. If I had friends, he guilted me into thinking I was putting him second in our marriage. He also convinced me that our marriage issues were all my fault, that I was the reason he got mad and hurt me. She shrugged and added, he'd always say, Ava, you do this to me. This is your fault. You make me hurt you, as he was hurting me. After you're told something's wrong with you for long enough, especially if it's by someone who's supposed to love you, you begin believing it. That's how Madison makes me feel, constantly, Johnny confessed, while easing the Jeep around a slight curve in the gravel path. If you want to know my story, just put my name into everything Tally spoke about tonight. That's been my life since I met Madison, and like you, I wondered what I was doing wrong to make her so miserable, so angry with me all the time. I thought I was a horrible husband, but I didn't know how to fix the problem. Abusers do that to you, Ava admitted. They make you think it's your fault. You're always the problem. They're always the victim. And it didn't matter how much money I made either, he added. It was never enough. He shook his head. Don't get me wrong, I like working. I'd go crazy sitting around doing nothing. But something's wrong when you make a high hourly wage and still need to work 80 hours a week just to make ends meet. I swear, Madison thinks money grows on trees. Ava nodded. Johnny looked at her. I don't usually talk this much, he confessed. I don't know why I'm talking with you. You're finally learning the truth, and I'm the one who keeps being thrust into your path. I guess so, Johnny agreed. Don't feel bad about the Madison show tonight, Ava advised. We all know the truth. 2 minutes after she entered the room that first night, we knew. It's one of those been there, done that things. The mention of Madison's name prompted Johnny to glance at the parking area for their vehicle, but it was gone. They must have left, he said. Who? Paige and Madison. Our vehicle's gone. I guess they went to town for something. Not Paige, Ava corrected. She's inside the lodge, waiting to speak with Charlie. I bet she is, Johnny mused. Poor guy. I'm causing him all kinds of headaches. With that thought in mind, Johnny and Ava drove silently for the next quarter of a mile. They both knew Haven's Rest would be much more peaceful had Johnny not come, but if he had not come, he would still be confused about his marriage. He now understood the problem, and it wasn't him as Madison always claimed. He didn't know what he would do about the issue when they returned home, but he would make some changes. To begin with, he would open a personal bank account and start paying their bills from that. He would work fewer hours, and Madison would have limited spending money unless she got a job and made it herself. During the past few years, they had nearly lost their home twice because of her spending issues. That was going to change. Also, they would visit a marriage counselor whether she liked it or not. If she refused, that would be the end of their marriage. A sudden movement near Ava's door caught Johnny's attention, returning him to the present. He paused, thoroughly scanning the landscaped area surrounding her cabin, but saw nothing. The front door appeared to be closed, as expected. Nahath eased to his side. You are right, he warned. You did see something. Did you see movement over there? Johnny asked, pointing toward her cabin. No, Ava answered. She looked more carefully. I don't see anything. Nahath swung his sword from the ether through the air, causing a loud zipping noise. Moments later, Teasel and Arden were hovering at his side. They're in place, he said. Alma's back, and it's more than just a scouting party this time. I'm going in with Johnny and Ava. Teasel, get Buck. Arden, you get Charlie. They're probably still at the lodge. try to persuade them to bring their guns. In a flash, both angelic warriors were gone. "Be careful, Johnny," Nahath warned. "You did see something. This is a haven for abused people. There are a lot of abusers who want the final say. They don't appreciate someone they consider their property escaping." Johnny eased the Jeep to a stop in front of Ava's cabin as the uneasy feeling in his spirit grew. "Ava," he whispered, "why don't you stay here and let me check the cabin?" "Why?" she asked, looking at him with alarm. "Probably nothing," he answered. "You just left Ed. It'd be best for us to be extra careful right now." "Ed doesn't have a clue where I am," Ava responded. Her voice was trembling, even though she believed her own words. When she fled, her one remaining friend had picked her up in the middle of the day and drove her to a bus station over 5 hours from their home. She jumped a plane from that bus and flew across the country to a California airport. A pre-designated driver had picked her up at that airport and drove her to a rental car place over 4 hours away, where her driver rented another vehicle using a credit card Jenny shipped to her friend the week before. During the trip, Ava wore an expensive black wig made from natural hair. With her large glasses, the gallon of makeup smeared over her face to change her complexion and cover the bruises, and the black wig concealing her blonde hair, even her father would not have recognized her. She was confident that Ed had no idea where she had gone. One day, she would ask her friend to meet her father for lunch and let him know she was okay. Ava was unsure if she would ever see him again, at least not until her stepmom was out of the picture, because Margie would jump at the chance to tell Ed where she was hiding. She hated Ava and had been jealous of her from the first moment they met, and the years that followed had not softened that jealousy. As a result, Margie's marriage to her father had soured, and she would notify Ed of Ava's whereabouts in a heartbeat. Johnny turned off the Jeep's ignition and then switched it back on. "I'm sure it's nothing," he said while slipping out of the seat without grabbing any groceries, "but it never hurts to be careful. You stay here until I return." Ava's hands began shaking as memories of Ed's violent temper returned. "Johnny, please be careful," she softly pleaded. "I don't care what you say," Paige screamed. "We are her closest relatives, and she told me years ago that I would inherit the family heirlooms and half of this property." Charlie tugged at the hair on the back of his head. "That's not what she told me, but it doesn't really matter what either of us say Auntie said. What matters is what the will—" "That's bull," she spat. "You've paid some attorney to doctor that will, and you know it." "Actually," Buck interrupted, "I probably need to—" Paige thrust her finger at him. "You don't speak. I fired you the first day we arrived. We don't need a wrench hand for a wrench we're selling, and don't expect to get paid for this past week either. I told you to leave." Paige returned her attention to Charlie. "I've paid a private investigator to disqualify your fraudulent will. Don't think I'm letting this go just because you visited her more often. We live farther away, so it's not as easy for us to get here as it is for you." Charlie burst out laughing. "You don't work. You could have come any time you wanted, and you've only visited her twice in 13 years. Paige stood straight and tall. "That's not accurate. He ignored her protest because that was one of Auntie's concerns about Paige taking over the ministry. If she didn't care enough to visit the place but twice in over a decade, why would she put effort into running it? He continued, not allowing her to finish her statement. "And those 2 visits were only because a wealthy relative died, and the celebration of life was here, before the reading of their wills. You could easily have visited whenever you wanted. Besides, most of those years you weren't 30 minutes further away than I was." "Charlie," Claire said, "don't worry about this. It doesn't matter what—" "And you shut your mouth," Paige demanded. "Why are you even here? You're not her blood." "I've had enough of this," Buck interrupted, anger now steaming in his eyes. It was one thing for Paige to come against him or Charlie, but it was another for her to treat Claire with such disrespect. He stepped directly between her and Claire in a protective manner. Paige glared at him. "You've had enough! You've had enough!" She moved closer and stuck her finger in his face. "You've had enough! I've watched you mistreat my daughter all week. I've watched you all act like you're better than us. You, an uneducated cowhand. I'm done with—" "If you don't calm down," Buck again interrupted, "I'm going to call the police and have you escorted from this property." "Ha!" Paige blurted while grabbing her cell phone and dialing 911. "How about I do that for you? You're the trespasser here. How about I get the local authorities to kick your butt off my property?" Claire's face was burning red. This ridiculous argument had lasted long enough. "This is crazy," she said, half to herself and half to Paige. "Charlie's your cousin. Why would you attack your own—" "Maybe I can be of assistance," Tally said upon entering the lodge office. Everyone still present knew what was happening, but she hoped to quiet the situation since she possessed Auntie's former will. Paige stared at the attorney as the dispatcher answered the call. "Yes," Paige said into the phone. "This is Paige Lancaster. I don't have time to answer your questions. I need you to send an officer to Haven's Rest before I kill someone." She hung up the phone. "Nice, Paige," Charlie said. "Do you realize what you've just done?" Tally continued. "I was Auntie's attorney for years, and I still have her original will from 10 years ago. If her current will turns out to be fraudulent, the old one will automatically be reinstated." Paige glared at Tally. "That will is outdated. It will not be allowed." "That's the way the law works," Buck inserted. Paige turned her attention back to him. "Why are you still here? Get out," she demanded, pointing toward the door. "I swear I will have you arrested for trespassing." "I'm afraid he can't do that, and neither can you," Charlie informed her. "He's Auntie's attorney, and he has her permission to be here until the reading of the will." "Right," Paige burst out laughing as she swung her hand through the air. "This uneducated mutt of a man is Auntie's attorney? Where'd you get your law degree? Disneyland?" "No," Tally replied, answering her question even though it wasn't meant as a genuine question. "He graduated with honors from Liberty Law School in Lynchburg, Virginia." A mocking edge crept into Paige's laughter. "Right," she muttered while turning a circle, looking at the ceiling and pretending to be amused. "And I'm Mrs. Claus." Claire reached out her hand in greeting. "Hello, Mrs. Claus. I'm Claire O'Dare." "Cute," Paige snared as her eyes narrowed. Tally stared at Paige. "He is an attorney," she repeated, "and a very good one at that." Paige's head snapped back. "You're in this with them. Of course you are. You live in the same town. Your speech tonight. I should have known. You've been a part of this sham from the beginning. What a crock!" She threw her hands in the air and swung her head toward the ceiling. "How could I be so stupid? You called them as soon as I left your office." She turned her eyes toward Tally. "I'll have your license for this. That was a confidential meeting." "No," Tally corrected. "I haven't spoken to anyone about your visit." Buck regarded Tally. "Her new will is the same as the one you did for her years ago, except for one exception after she discovered some new information about the family heirlooms. As a result, she wants some specific instructions concerning them observed." Tally looked back at Paige. If both wills match, and she left verifiable details concerning the heirlooms, then there is no question of its legitimacy. Auntie has wanted the same thing for years, and as long as the new will was properly executed, her wishes must be followed. "New information? What information? Paige demanded. They are family heirlooms, that's all. And I don't even know if she still has them. The last time I saw them was nearly 10 years ago. I doubt that, Claire commented. Paige's eyes boiled as she glared at her. That information will be disclosed at the reading of the will, Buck said. Oh, come on, Paige stormed, pacing to the far side of the room. We've been stuck in this dump for days. Charlie and I are the only ones who need to be present at the reading of the will. We're here. Just get it over with. Buck looked at Charlie. Is that what you wish to? Sure, Charlie agreed. If the purpose of our waiting is accomplished, then let's get it over with. It is, Buck assured. He stepped toward a picture hanging on the wall and removed it to reveal a small safe. He then began turning the combination lock in a specific sequence as silence filled the room. With the final click, Buck turned the safe handle, opened its door, and removed a tidy manila envelope. We could have done this on Monday? Paige fumed. You're kidding. I've been stuck in this nightmare for days when it could have ended on Monday? Teasel and Arden eased into the room. Charlie, Arden said, Ava and Johnny need your help. Now, Teasel added, they need your help immediately. Charlie felt ill at ease, but he ignored the feeling and watched as Buck pulled the documents from the envelope. I don't believe this, Paige thundered. I don't believe this. She shook her head in fury and swung her hand toward the documents. Leave it to Bobby Joe to pull something like this. They were in her safe this entire time, and you are her attorney. What kind of game? There was a purpose for waiting, Buck interrupted. Charlie, Buck, Teasel again urged. Listen to us. Johnny and Ava need your help. I was following Auntie's instructions, Buck said. Don't you dare call her Auntie, Paige fumed. She wasn't your aunt. He's known her far longer than you have, Charlie inserted. She helped raise him, and this was his home for— I don't care, Paige screamed. He's not blood. He's not her family. And so help me, if he inherits any part of her wealth, I will appeal this to the highest court in the land. Charlie, Buck, Claire, listen to us, Teasel urgently repeated. Ava and Johnny need your help. Charlie shook his head in regret. Just read the will. There's no reasoning with her when she's like— They aren't going to listen, Arden said. They're too upset. Teasel groaned. I'll get back to Nahath. You keep working on them. Paige turned her ire toward Charlie. How dare you, you arrogant—